I froze behind the counter, the fluorescent hum slicing through the quiet of the late-night store. Outside, the empty parking lot stretched into black nothingness, dotted by the faint shimmer of a single streetlight. I hadn't expected anyone else this late. Not a soul for miles. The child, maybe 7 or 8, stood at the end of aisle 3, hands folded neatly, staring at me with wide, unblinking eyes. The kind of gaze that knows more than it should. "I think they were," the child said softly, voice calm, precise. "Your other self." They smiled differently, more open, didn't frown when the soda cooler jammed, didn't sigh when the doors whined. I swallowed hard. I don't know what you mean." They stepped closer, tiny shoes squeaking softly on the linoleum. I noticed the way the cooler lights reflected off their hair, how their shadow stayed just slightly behind them, a little too long, a little too dark. "They had a rhythm," the child continued. "When they stocked chips, they stacked them by color. You stacked them by height. You're grumpy sometimes." I blinked. My hands were gripping the counter, knuckles white. I knew my own habits. I knew how I arranged the shelves, how I fidgeted with the scanner when bored. I had no memory of any other me stacking chips differently. "I don't know anyone else," I said, forcing a chuckle that came out brittle. The child tilted their head. "You do. I saw them in the monitors. Behind you sometimes. Not always. They watched me differently, their smile softer." I glanced at the bank of security monitors. Normally, I ignored them. The flickering squares showing empty aisles, static parking lot, the occasional shadow of a car passing far away. Tonight, though, I felt compelled to watch. The screens buzzed, then cut briefly to black. One monitor flickered back, and for a moment, I saw myself, or someone like me, moving down aisle 4, stacking drinks into the cooler with slow precision. Their head tilted, smile quiet, hands deliberate. I wasn't moving. I hadn't moved. I rubbed my eyes. Maybe that was a reflection. The child shook their head. "Reflections aren't. They're different. They don't breathe the same." The other one. They never blinked when they smiled. The hum of the store felt louder, the fluorescent lights flickering in uneven pulses. I noticed subtle shifts in the aisles. A display of chips closer to the counter than it had been. A cooler door left slightly ajar that I had definitely closed, shadows moving at the edges of my vision. "Do they talk to you?" I asked cautiously, heart hammering. "Sometimes," the child said, voice flat. "They ask about your day. They ask about me. They don't ever frown. They don't get tired. They look at me the way I look at the sky at night, calm and endless." A cold draft snaked along the floor, brushing the backs of my legs. The automatic doors sighed open and closed, though I hadn't seen a car pass. The store felt smaller, narrower, as though the walls had leaned in slightly. I walked down aisle 2, feeling the tile shift under my feet, each step slightly off, like the store had rearranged itself around the child's words. A cooler door swung silently in the reflection of the freezer glass, though I had not touched it. "You should meet them," the child whispered, stepping closer. "They know things. They know everything you don't." I felt my reflection in the cooler glass. At first it was me, pale, tired, scanning the aisle. But then the corners of my mouth curved into a smile I didn't remember practicing. My reflection blinked too slowly, lingered too long, hands folded neatly instead of dangling. I stumbled backward, knocking over a stack of candy bars. The sound echoed far too long in the store, resonating through the fluorescent hum. I looked up. The child's shadow stretched along the floor, but there was another shadow, taller, steadier, moving behind the rows of soda like a second presence. "Did you know," the child said, tilting their head again, "that they sometimes hide in the reflection, watch from the corners? They wait for someone to look away, and then they practice being you." A hiss of static crawled from the monitors. One flickered, showing the store exactly as it had been an hour ago. Neat shelves, cooler doors closed, aisles empty. Another monitor showed it now, warped, off-kilter, the lights blinking in an impossible rhythm. And in each I saw them, My other self. Staring. Smiling. Patient. Unwavering. I wanted to speak, to call it out, but my voice lodged somewhere between fear and disbelief. The child took my hand gently. Cold. Small. They're nicer, they said again. They'll ask about my day, but they don't make mistakes. They make the store feel right. You frown too much. You sigh too much. I stumbled toward the back, toward the stockroom, desperate to escape the slow distortion of the store. But the aisles bent. The fluorescent lights hung lower. Every reflection of me now lingered, fingers twitching unnaturally, movements not my own. And then I saw it clearly. My other version leaning in the doorway of aisle 6, head tilted the same way the child described, smiling a slow, deliberate smile I had never practiced. Their hands were folded neatly in front, fingers precise, eyes wide and patient. The child turned toward me. Do you want to meet them? I shook my head, heart hammering. No, I don't think I should. Their tiny hands squeezed mine. You can. Or, maybe you already have. A flicker of the monitors caught me just in time. My reflection, exactly like me, standing behind the counter, staring at the child. But then it blinked, and the corners of its mouth curved upward just slightly, just enough to make me doubt myself. The hum of the coolers rose, louder than it should have, vibrating through my chest. Shadows pooled unnaturally in the corners, shifting, stretching. And in every reflective surface, counter glass, cooler doors, the stainless steel freezer. There I was, or not me, smiling just a little differently, waiting. I backed toward the door, the child following silently. Their gaze never left me. Outside, the parking lot was empty. Yet I felt the weight of something behind me. Something patient, something quieter, kinder, and impossibly mine. The automatic door's side. I paused at the threshold, hand on the handle, and in that long, impossible moment, I realized I didn't know which one of us had been the original. And the child said, softly, almost laughing, maybe they're the real you now. The fluorescent lights flickered once more, and the store exhaled a slow, humming breath as the doors swung closed behind me. The freezer doors opened on their own, revealing a hallway. I froze behind the counter, the fluorescent hum of the late-night store cutting through the stillness. Outside, the empty fields pressed in, black and silent, broken only by the faint glimmer of the distant highway lights. The store had always been remote, but tonight it felt abandoned in a deeper way. A low hiss of condensation curling from the freezer doors drew my gaze. The doors hadn't been open a second ago. Now one swung wide, a narrow slice of dim, amber light spilling into the store. The air smelled colder, sharper, almost metallic, and a draft curled around my ankles. I told myself it was a malfunction. Freezer doors stuck open sometimes. But as I stepped closer, the gap widened impossibly. The light from inside wasn't the sterile white of the coolers. It was warmer, flickering, like a candle struggling in a breeze. And the hallway stretched farther than it could possibly fit inside the store's slab-on-grade layout. I took a cautious step. My reflection in the freezer glass showed me hesitating, but I could see movement behind me in the reflection. A shadow, subtle, just at the edge, shifting when nothing should have been there. Hello! My voice was brittle, swallowed almost immediately by the humming lights and the soft buzz of the coolers. The hallway seemed to inhale, the air growing colder the closer I got. Each step left faint frost on the tile beneath my shoes, as if the cold had condensed from nowhere. The walls were narrow, concrete and unfinished, but faint scratches and scuff marks suggested someone, or something, had walked here recently. I glanced back. The store looked normal, almost. The candy display near the counter was slightly shifted. A stack of soda cans leaned impossibly. The monitors flickered, one showing the store as it had been an hour ago. Empty aisles, neat coolers. Another showed it now, distorted, warped, as if the walls themselves had stretched. I stepped fully into the hallway. The light was uneven, and my shadow flickered across the walls longer than it should, stretching and compressing in ways that made my stomach lurch. The sound of the freezers hummed behind me, but warped, echoing down the hall, almost like voices murmuring just below the threshold of comprehension. Somewhere ahead, I thought I saw movement. Not a person, just a shift in the dim light, a form that wasn't quite solid. The air smelled faintly of old paper, oil, and something sweet, like candy left too long in the sun. I shivered. I ran a hand along the wall. The surface was smooth, cold, and wet with condensation that dripped in tiny, irregular patterns. One drip fell onto my hand, and I saw it linger for a beat too long, hanging in the air before hitting the floor with a soft, distorted plink. The hallway seemed to warp around me as I walked. A bend turned into a long straight stretch. The light above flickered, revealing glimpses of what shouldn't exist. Aisles of frozen goods extending into impossible depths, reflections of myself rearranging shelves I hadn't touched, monitors stacked along the walls showing angles of the store that didn't exist. I thought I heard the squeak of shoes behind me. Not mine. Someone or something was following, keeping pace just beyond sight. The air pressed against my ears, muffling my own breathing, amplifying every small sound. The buzz of a vending machine somewhere far away, the rattle of the fluorescent tubes above, the faint metallic drip from the condensation. And then I saw them. A figure stood halfway down the hall, framed in dim light. At first, I thought it was a customer, but the shape was too familiar, too precise. My heart hammered as I realized it was me. Or not me. The same height, same clothes, same posture, but wrong. Their head tilted at an angle I never held. The corners of their mouth curved just slightly differently. Their eyes calm in a way mine never were. I froze. The reflection in the damp walls showed them closer, though I hadn't moved. Another glance, and they were farther down the hallway, waiting patiently. "Who are you?" I croaked, voice trembling. They didn't answer. They didn't need to. Every movement was deliberate, every detail exactly what I would have done. But better, quieter, more patient. They reached a hand toward me, the light catching the subtle condensation on their fingertips. I stumbled back. Behind me, the hallway rippled, stretching, narrowing, the walls bending in impossible ways. One moment I could see the counter, the candy display, the monitors. The next, the hallway seemed infinite, lined with freezers that reflected forms that weren't real. I couldn't tell if I was moving forward or if the hallway was moving around me. A draft hissed past my ear, carrying faint whispers. Words I couldn't parse, voices I knew, voices I wasn't sure I recognized. The smell of the store and the hallway merged. Concrete, cold metal, and that faint sweetness. My pulse pounded in my ears. I turned to run back toward the freezer doors. The gap that had led me here was gone. Instead, I saw another stretch of hallway, identical, twisting at impossible angles. I caught my reflection in the glass doors, my eyes wide, but the corners of my mouth quirked, just slightly, in a smile I had never practiced. I froze. The other me stepped closer, mirrored, patient, and waiting. I tried to speak, but no sound came. My breath fogged the air, curling upward unnaturally. The hallway seemed to fold around us, walls bending, lights flickering, sounds distorting into warped echoes of the store I had known. I reached a hand forward, touching the other me. Their skin was cold, impossibly smooth, solid yet intangible. The world shivered, and suddenly I was somewhere else entirely, or perhaps everywhere at once. The freezers hummed, the monitors flickered, the lights pulsed, and I realized I couldn't tell which hallway I had entered, which store I had left behind. Somewhere a door sighed, somewhere else a freezer opened. The air hissed, and in every reflection, I saw myself, moving, waiting, patient, smiling just a little differently. I backed away, but the hallway shifted, following me. My breath came faster, and the cold wrapped around my chest. I stumbled, and a faint laugh, or maybe a hiss, echoed through the space. The last thing I saw before the light flickered and the hallway swallowed me was the other me, standing perfectly still, calm, patient, and impossibly familiar. And then the freezers were closed. The store was silent. The fluorescent lights hummed normally. The counter, the displays, the monitors, all of it appeared exactly as it had been. But I didn't move. I didn't know if I had ever left the hallway, or if the hallway had just become the store.